Good evening, everyone.
Welcome and thank you for joining for our tonight's event. We hope that you had a chance to talk with others. By the way, I'm Nico, mechanical engineer from Water, and with me is
I'm Donna, Seniors Program Specialist of ARUP. And we are your hosts
host for
tonight.
tonight. We badge this event as Integrated Water Management. As we see, this is the only way to make sure that we can address the challenges of having too little water, too much water, water in the wrong place, or water at the wrong time. If we can address the water system, the cycle as a whole, then there's a better chance to making sure we can support people, their lives, and the environment in the most sustainable way. Before we kick off into presentations, we just wanted to note that over the last few years, ARUP had been a strong supporter of COP events. As part of this, in this region, we have run a series of events and webinars. Last year in Manila, we focused on the energy sector. For tonight, we will focus on the water sector, having tonight our global water leader, Dr. Mark Fletcher. We will have 4 different discussions and speakers tonight.
To kick off our sessions, I would like to introduce Adrian Marsden. I'm sure many of you knows Adrian. He's been in Manila for the last 13 years working on a range of water projects. In addition of the work he's done here in Philippines, he has also successfully delivered projects in Indonesia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Romania, Sri Lanka, and the UK. Adrian is part of the East Asia and Global Water Executives of ARUP. May we call on Adrian Marsden to officially launch the event.
Thank you very much. I think it's maganda gabi sa inyo lahat. My very limited Tagalog, as I will not do any more of it. We just wanted to give a little bit of context before introducing the main speakers. And we started with this image. This is actually a project we worked on in Mindanao a couple of years ago. Beautiful watercourse. And I think what we'd all love to see our water systems look like all the time. And the bit you don't see from this photo was in this catchment. I think it's something like 110 protected species or endemic species endangered. And the whole purpose of this project, and I don't know, some of our colleagues in the room will have worked on this, was to protect the watershed so that they could keep taking water out of it moving forwards. And I think that's the whole point of this conversation about making the most and protecting our environment. Obviously, I think, I've been in the Philippines for 13 years. I think we all know there's plenty of water around. It floods a lot, but I think we're also clear, and we've had a couple of conversations with people over the last few days, that the planning really isn't sufficient. And it's very hard in the face of uncertainty. And I know Mark, Wayne, and the other Mark, who are going to talk in a bit, will discuss that in a little bit more detail. And it's getting more complicated as we move forwards. The risks are harder to understand, and how we plan our way through that is where I think we can make real difference. And our work is changing. The image shows a number of projects we've worked on all over Metro Manila and outside of Metro Manila in the Philippines. But the work is changing, and we need to be doing different things. And that's partly why we have everyone here today, is to discuss that. So water is what water could be. Where has it taken us? So, we know that water does more than just water. It can be a source of energy, sludge processing, pineapple processing. And the reason I have that up is we worked on a project in Mindanao, another Mindanao project a few years ago, and I know Dietmar knows this one very well. And Mark did a presentation at Stockholm Water Week, I think 10 years or so ago, where he described the water cycle and where we generated energy, and he described Sven the woodcutter, who somehow ended up in the Philippines generating energy from pineapples. And I hope his presentation tonight doesn't do that one again, but it should be of that sort of nature. But are there other options? Could we use it for hydrogen production? So really, what is the total value of water, and how do we use that in a fully integrated way? And what we're going to do, so where could this vision take us? So I hope this isn't Manila Bay, but hopefully in a few years' time, I guess the long-term vision would be we'd want Manila Bay to look like this, somewhere we'd be very happy to go. I've just got back from Singapore, and you're very happy to have a drink by Marina Bay. We don't have that in the Philippines, and I think that's what we'd be looking for if we get all this right, a fully working environment that is fitting for something we can make the most of. So with that sort of little context and background, I'm going to introduce Mark Fletcher, our global water leader. He'll be followed by Patrick Dizon from MWSS. Wayne Middleton, our Australia business leaders here as well, and he'll talk about water security. And then, not least, Mark Wallace, another Mark, from our tunnelling business, to talk about how we move and manage that water around. So with that, I think, Mark, I hand over to yourself. And I hope the IT works.
Thanks very much. And I'm in the middle of my odyssey around Southeast Asia. I've just been to Hong Kong. I'm with you now, and I'll be going on to China, to Nanjing, to Beijing, and to Shanghai. So I've been with Arup for 36 years. I'll hold it right up there. I've been with Arup for 36 years. And it's just such a wonderful place to work. And I'd like to share some of my experience with you in the next about 30 minutes or something like that. There's plenty of pictures. You won't have to scribble too much. So what I want to share with you is a sort of a reimagined approach to water. That is the shift from when I started working, where we were thinking about outputs and how we've started to think about outcomes in the way in which we manage water. So a little bit of structure. So I'll set a little bit of context first. Then we'll think about some cross-cutting themes that I think really important for you to think about in terms of the way in which we start to manage and consider the context of where we're working. And then I'll share some of the work that we've been doing around sponge cities, around nature-based solutions. Sponge City is an initiative that came out of China that we've actually tried to apply in a pragmatic and practical way around the world, so I'll share where we're at on that. Some of the work we've done with water resilience, and interesting, where we saw the issue of rapid urbanisation and the importance of cities and catchment scale for how we manage water resilience. And then I'll sort of summarise at the end with some latest thinking around integrated water management. So it should be fun, I think. So I'll start with setting some context. Some of these little icons are going to appear as we go through some of the slides. It's just to give you a little bit of steer about what we're talking about, whether it's climate change, whether it's nature-based solutions, or indeed whether it's pizza. And I'll come to that later. That gets really interesting. And I will touch on governance as we go. So this is how we used to manage water, thinking of the assets in water as something that we discharge into, sort of a sewer, something we flush and forget, something where industrially or agriculturally we basically discharge our effluent. This is the River Aire in Leeds, and during my career it's gone from a milky white or milky grey biologically dead river to a river that now has salmon, it has otters, it has kingfishers. And if you had a house on the River Aire, historically the value decreased as you moved closer to the river. Now, because we've improved the quality of the river, the value increases along the river. Imagine how much that does for the local economy. So increasingly, we're now looking about developing around our rivers in a much more sustainable way. And sustainable development's right at the heart of what Arup does. We're talking about this concept of restoring rivers and streams, putting right some of the negatives from the past, using those as a catalyst for wider regeneration. And what a shock that we might work in tune with nature rather than against nature. So we might work in terms of climate positive. But the pace of change is absolutely phenomenal, apart from the fact that my A-level project was on sea level rise by chance as a geographer. But we've seen the important issues of climate change shift up the agenda very quickly. And we're also seeing the impacts of our anthropogenic influence, that's our man-made influence on climate change, realised through the impacts we all experience. More extreme extremes and more frequent extremes. And just to turn that into a number, thinking about a warming of 1 degree, meaning a 10% intensity in rainfall. So you could think at the moment the UK's Environment Agency plan for 4 degrees warming. So you could think of that as 40% increase in rainfall intensity. I love to talk about resilience. On my honeymoon this year, we went to Venice, and we went because I love this image. This is Lorenzo Quinn, Anthony Quinn's son. And sometimes it says to me how we can use art or sculpture as a way to convey a message. And this is, what do we need to improve the resilience in the face of climate change? And a picture paints 1,000 words for me. What we do need to do is we need to collaborate. We need to work with others. We need to all be on the same page in terms of understanding about resilience, working with organisations here like Stockholm International Water Institute, or indeed the World Bank, and coming up with frameworks of understanding that we can all operate within. More of that later. We ran a course on resilience of urban systems with MIT Management, with incidentally a week in Manila and a week in Boston. We had a week in Hong Kong and a week in Boston, and we had a week in Bogota, and then we had a week online because of COVID. But what we were trying to do there was really get a broader understanding of what resilience is all about, really to prepare our organisation and some of our clients for the future as we face the tsunami that the climate change impacts present. This is from COP26 in Glasgow. This is the UN Dutch envoy to the United Nations, Henk Ovink. It's about dialogue and influence. It's really important. We've got to think about, yes, adapting to the impacts, but also mitigating the causes of climate change. And I think about building resilience for people, places, and the environment. And that isn't just to shocks, and we can think about storms or we can think about droughts, but also to incremental changes like sea level rise. So as I talk about some cross-cutting themes, adaptation is really growing in importance. There are 5 adaptation pathway projects in the UK being led by the National Environment Agency, that Arup are leading on 4 and the support in the other. So when we're thinking about impacts, this was the coastal El Nino in 2017 in Peru. And this affected 115,000 homes in terms of demolishing them, displacing a huge number of people. And I think what's significant about it, that was 17 river basins and 7 cities affected by a single event, very much like the sorts of events that we've seen in Pakistan. But extremes are the new normal. And across Europe, we've recently experienced a drought in excess of a 500-year event. So how do we adapt? How do we think about how we manage with a future of uncertainty? And do we need more evidence of events that demonstrate the impacts of climate change around the world? It's interesting. I think I could probably update this every week with additional events. So we don't need convincing anymore what's going on. It's really important. So I said, this is the Environment Agency. This is the future flood scenario, 4-degree rise in temperature. And what they're developing is this approach called adaptive planning, where I think if I press this button, it'll work. You're going to be impressed with this. There we go. So rather than looking at major significant investments up front, we're looking at, here we go, so think about the blue line, incremental investments, where we're looking at how we're developing the adaptive capacity rather than just forecasting a future. In a face of uncertainty, this is a much more appropriate way to operate. And I love this slide because this slide shows that in terms of working with nature, this is showing the meandering, or how meanders have evolved over time and how dynamic nature is. So from my perspective, I'd say that the more that we work in tune with nature, and with nature, then the more nature is our friend. Nature's part of the solution. So an absolute fundamental. When I was at COP26 in Glasgow, I was talking to this lady next to me on my right, and she was working with local farmers in China who were picking the seeds from those crops that thrived when there wasn't very much water or when there was too much water. And then she would then collect those seeds from a village perspective, and those villages would then be collected from a town perspective and then from a city perspective, so that they had this sort of national seed bank of increasingly tolerant species that could adapt to the extremes that we're experiencing. I thought that was an interesting perspective, and I wouldn't have found out if I hadn't been a guest at the Chinese pavilion that there weren't any non-Chinese people would have gained that insight from unless they'd been there in the pavilion at that time. What's the other important thing? I think how we value our environment, or how we look at the sort of economic frameworks in which we operate. There's a multi-capitals frameworks or total value frameworks that think more about things like the social capital or the natural capital or the manufactured capital from what we do, rather than the way we've historically made decisions. I think that's fundamental. I think the other thing is, for us, we thought the shift from green to sustainable was what it's all about. Of course it is. I think that's a sort of, for me, a minimum threshold. This is work from Johan Rockström at the Potsdam Institute. And if we can see how, in terms of biodiversity, how we're looking at starting to both go from a sustainable future, but what about putting back the things that we've done in the past that are wrong? How do we look to restore and then regenerate? I didn't realise if I pressed it twice, it does two different things. That's extremely clever. Now it's time for the pizza. So if I took anything from our course in MIT, it isn't that Boston's a great place for pizza. It's that this is the way I used to think about cities. And I think that in many ways, the way cities were set up, all with separate slices, all with separate silos, not really working together. And in terms of not really in tune with nature, but facing increasing climatic impacts. What I've realised, though, is that's what it's really like. And unless we start to understand the dependencies and the interdependencies of those systems, I think we're going to struggle. And in Glasgow, where over 100,000 people came out on the streets saying they're concerned about climate too, I think people are really important as we go about how we manage the future of our public realm and our catchments. But do you engage them as customers, as citizens, as activists, partners, or supporters? And the context's really important. Are you engaging them because you're a public authority, you're a private company, you might be mutual, you might run not-for-profit or an NGO? There's a sort of complexity in this that's often lost. But I think one of the challenges that we had was the way in which we tried to unite communities in Belfast through construction, through restoration of the Cons Water and construction of 26 rivers that were bringing together divided communities. And I can say that through our actions there, we've got a much more integrated community than we've ever had. So I think you can face really tough challenges and you can bring people together around in what I would say common outcomes and a common future. The other thing that's really important in my experience as I've travelled through the world is governance, and that's clarifying who's responsible for what. And we could think about that across the catchment. And I'll just share, this was the thinking in New Zealand around their water reform that's all now been pretty much scrapped with the political change we've just had within their country. But they call this a sort of three waters, where we're looking at water, wastewater, and stormwater. And at the time, everyone's saying, how radical, isn't this fantastic, because we're thinking three waters. I said, oh, it's really radical, but where's water from agriculture? And where's water from industry? So, and that is in a country where I'd say the indigenous people, of all the indigenous people I've met around the world, have this really closest connection with water being very much life, the giver of all things. Ironically, that now, therefore, that water reform gets scrapped and we have to take a few steps backwards. What's the other thing that's happened, apart from the fact that when I started working, we used to have drawing boards and pens, is this rapid application of digital. I used to have an apricot computer, and now people have apples. I probably bought the wrong one. If I still had that computer, I'd be a millionaire now. But when I'm talking about rapid application of digital, I'm thinking about, these are the sorts of photographs I used to look at with a stereoscope. Not that I now can get a digital representation pretty quickly around it. And I think that's been quite useful. How do you take some of the themes that I've been talking about and start to combine them in a really productive way? We can think about how we can apply it to sponge cities. This is cities to soak up water. And what we did in Shanghai, we took a city of 26 million people, and we looked at how we look at blue, green, grey infrastructure as well as governance. This was as a result of winning an international competition. And when we assessed the typologies of the city, we looked at how we could maximise green infrastructure for that city within the context of maximising the existing blue infrastructure. This was a $43 billion problem when it was a grey infrastructure problem of large tunnels and pumping stations. And when we produced our plan and submitted it and the client reran the numbers, they saved over $10 billion, which is quite staggering. So is there something we can learn from that? Well, we used a digital model to develop that, and it was called Terrain. And we thought, well, why can't we do some sort of quick and dirty assessments that we could share with other people around the world? So we did snapshots in cities where we were looking at green space and the ability of soils to soak up water, those sorts of things, so that we could come, it's a bit noddy, but it sort of gets people as an entry point into thinking about how could we get cities to soak up more water. Auckland coming at the top of the ranking and London coming at the bottom of the ranking. And just giving a sense of the sorts of things that we were looking at and that sort of data we were using. You can imagine that if your entry point's the Sponge City snapshot, but if your final point's a drainage master plan to tackle a problem, there might be something in it. Okay, so let's think about resilience to too much water, too little water, or if it's too polluted. We developed a framework called the City Water Resilience Approach with Rockefeller Foundation and the World Bank. And it basically involves understanding the city, prioritizing or doing a maturity assessment on how resilient it is, and then doing a governance model across the water cycle using an open source, free to use, our water governance tool. This is the sort that gives you a sense of how you start to understand the system and map it with that tool. and then how you start to assess it against standard indicators, universal indicators around the world. Interestingly, one of those cities was day zero, and one of the things we'd take from Cape Town is when day zero was announced, this idea that the city would run out of water, it triggered a behavioural change in the way people used water, resulting in a 30% reduction. One of the other interesting things is a better understanding of, by planting non-native trees in Cape Town, they were consuming 55 billion litres of water a year, equivalent to 2 or 3 months of their annual consumption. So they've now got a programme of putting natural trees back into the catchment. Probably an unintended consequence of working with a lack of knowledge of that indigenous forestry or vegetation. But an easy win if you really want to look at catchment scale and benefit for the city. So I'll really finish on integrated water management and how we sort of shift from working in silos in all our respective authorities, all well-intended, into something that's a little bit more integrated, and also more integrated with local people and traditional owners and indigenous people. Our framework, our design with water, how we start to think about rethinking assets, rethinking stewardship and rethinking value, very much along the lines of the value framework, total value framework I talked about earlier. How we can use water to start influencing things like livability or well-being for our people. How we can think of as water as a driver of cooling for cities or providing amenity or other benefits, natural capital, if you like. And we've thought about in terms of, we can think about scale, that's scale from a regional perspective to a local perspective, or scale in terms of familiar things that we do or new concepts that we might develop. And one of the neighbourhood scale initiatives is Southeast Water working with developers. So they're not just looking at the way in which you manage demand from a house perspective, they're looking at how you start to manage demand from a group of houses from a development perspective. Or looking here in Western Sydney, how you look at trying to take that scale up and use villages to start regenerate and think in a more integrated perspective around water cycle management. And then this is the work in Melbourne, looking at regional catalysts and how we start to look beyond just the developed space into the catchment and things like agriculture and food production. So that sort of concludes what I wanted to share with you. I thought this was at Stockholm World Water Week earlier this year, and it's Johan Rockström again. And it's this fundamental thing that sustainable development's at the heart of everything we do. And if we fail on the climate, on the Paris Climate Agreement, we also fail on the Sustainable Development Goals. But remember, the United Nations have said over 90% of the impacts of climate change are felt across the water cycle. I think that's why water's absolutely fundamental to what we're doing around climate change. I hope I've just got you thinking a little bit more, maybe share a bit of my experience. But this isn't a challenge for people in the corner. We all have a role to play. We're that generation where we've realised that climate change is happening, and we're the first line of defence. And I think we'll be measured by what we've done by future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Some takeaways, work with nature, work and value. We are part of my favorite pizza to take care of the well-being of everyone. And so I hope this case studies provided the global context of why we are doing this webinar series. But we know that while climate change is a global problem, actions will be local. So now, we'll hear from the next speakers who will help to explain the Philippines government initiative to address climate change and how sustainability professionals can contribute to such efforts. We are honored to have Patrick James Dizon from the Metropolitan Water Works and Sewerage System, or MWSS. Mr. Patrick is a civil engineer, sanitary engineer, and registered master plumber, has been appointed as the department manager of the Water Sewerage Management and division manager for Angat Ipo Dam Operation Management by MWSS. He oversees water source management and infrastructure projects in Metro Manila, Bulacan, Cavite, and Rizal provinces. Dizon has represented the Philippines in the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program and is an alumnus of the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative Professionals Fellow Program on Sustainable Development and the Environment. Let's all welcome Mr. Patrick James Dizon.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So, former colleagues from the private agencies and from any other water agencies. So, good evening, everyone. So, I'll be presenting to you the government initiatives for the water security, especially for the Metro Manila and also the nearby provinces like Bulacan, Rizal, and Cavite. So I would like to provide you some information about the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage Systems. So we're from the government agency. So we're created under the Republic Act 6234. So we're here for almost 52 years already. And the mandate of MWSS is to provide water to our customers in an affordable price and equitable manner. And also we're mandated to provide to treat the water from the customers. So we are mandated to treat the water that's being used by our customers. So that's part of the requirement of the Philippine Clean Water Act. And also we are part of our mandate is to secure the environment conservation. So we're conserving the watersheds. So we have critical watersheds that we get water from this area. So we have the Angat, Ipo, La Mesa, the Upper Marikina, Laguna Lake, General Nakar, and the Kaliwa watershed. So just recently, we just signed the memorandum of agreement between the Manila din Manila Water to have the integrated watershed management roadmap that we will be implemented up to 2047. So just to provide you some the milestone of WSS. So we're, as I mentioned a while ago, we're here for almost 52 years, but actually for the operation and maintenance for the water supply system for the Metro Manila, we're here since 1878. Actually, we just celebrated the 146 years of existence of the water supply in the Metro Manila. And as I mentioned a while ago, 1971 when the Republic Act was enacted. And since the enactment of the National Water Crisis Act on 1995, wherein the then President Ramos has agreed to have the public-private partnership between Manila din Manila Water. That's why when in 1997, the operation and maintenance of the water supply system and the sewerage system of Metro Manila was operated by the private company. So, and then in 2008, when the term extension, because the concession agreement is supposed to be until 2023, but it was extended to 15 years until 2037 right now. And in 2021, the Republic Act for the franchise law for Manila din Manila Water was signed. So they have the franchise to operate the water supply and sewerage system for the whole Metro Manila and nearby provinces up to 2047. So right now we're in the process of the extension of this term agreement. And also in 2021, the revised concession agreement was signed. This is because of the situation that was happening in 2019, wherein the Metro Manila experienced a water shortage. So the then President Duterte have required us to revise the concession agreement to take out those disadvantages to the public, the provisions that are disadvantages to the public. And on 2023, this year, just recently in April 2023, the Water Resources Management Office was created. So this is a transitory body for the Department of Water. So because right now we have a lot of water agencies in the government that basically dealing with water. So part of it is WSS and some other agencies. So this office was created to synergize those 30 plus agencies. So right now, this WRMO is being headed by the Undersecretary of the DNR, and we're part of this new transitory body. So alongside with the National Water Resources Board, Laguna Lake Development Authority, a local water utility authority for the operation of the water districts and IMWSS. And Manila din Manila Water, of course. So for the organizational chart, so we're being headed by the Board of Trustees. We have two offices. So I belong from the corporate office, wherein it's being headed by our administrator, which is also part or the vice chairman of the Board of Trustees. And the second office is the regulatory office. So the mandate of the regulatory office is to check on the compliance of the Manila din Manila Water for the concession agreement. So all of these offices, the two offices or the heads of these offices are coterminous with the president. Okay, and for the MWSS service areas, so we have three concessionaires. So the new one, which is the Luzon Clean Water Development Corporation, is the new concession of the MWSS. So they're providing bulk water to the water district. So they're providing for the 22 water districts. So we're now on the stage 3. So we signed the concession agreement with them on 2016. Yeah. So this is the distribution of the concession. So just to provide you some of the accomplishment of the Manila din Manila Water for since 1997, since the privatization. So as you can see, so the concession is very effective on their services with the water and sewerage. So for the non-revenue water, from 61% now goes down to 28%. So that's a high drop of the non-revenue water. And of course, for the population served, so from 5 million now goes up to 17 million, and the water supply coverage from 48 to 94%. And for the water sources, so right now we're dependent on one single water source, which is the Angat Dam. So we're getting 90% of our water from Angat Dam, and 8.5% came from the Laguna Lake. And for the groundwater for the outside Metro Manila, that's 1.3%. And we're now our concessionaires are now venturing with the treated water because we're now treating the wastewater. So instead of discharging it to the nearby bodies of water, so they constructed a new process to make it potable, to pass it into the Philippine National Standard for Drinking Water, and tap it to the distribution line. So right now, actually, the new water plant in Parañaque has a lot of awards that was received internationally already. And for the existing and planned raw water sources, so we break down into 4 systems. So as I mentioned a while ago, the existing water source system right now is Umiray, Angat, Ipon, Lamesa, and the Laguna Lake system, which is the Putatan. And right now, there are 2 ongoing treatment plants that's being constructed. One in Poblacion, which is located in Muntinlupa, and another one is in East Bay of the Laguna Lake. And of course, for the Wawa Tayabasan system, the existing is the Tayabasan Weir, and the ongoing right now, which is the new Wawa Dam project. I think Arup is one of the consultant of this project. And of course, this is the one of the biggest water supply project that we are constructing right now, which is the Kaliwa Dam project in Dakanan, which is the proposed one. I will be dealing with the details of this one later. So just wanted to show you a virtual tour of the existing water supply system of Metro Manila. So Angat Dam, as I mentioned a while ago, 90% of our water, we get it from Angat Dam. And we also have facilities upstream of this Angat Dam, which is this one, Umiray. So we have constructed a weir from the middle of the Sierra Madre mountain range, and a 14 kilometers tunnel is around 4.3 meter diameter, and it augments water to the Angat Dam. So Angat Dam is being operated by the National Power Corporation. So we're sharing the water from this dam to the National Irrigation. So every month, we're meeting with the National Water Resources Board, which is the chairman of the Angat Technical Working Group. So we're requesting the allocations for the month. So right now, we're for the information of our 3 concessionaires, the National Water Resources Board approved 50 cubic meter per second for November. So and from Angat Dam, so the water will be releases, and it will goes down to the Ipo Dam. So Ipo Dam is owned by MWSS, and it is operated by the common purpose facilities of Manila Water and MWSS. So Ipo Dam is not a power generation dam. So it's the purpose of this Ipo Dam is just to divert the water from our aqueduct. So we have right now 4 aqueducts. So from Ipo to Bigtet, so that's around 6.4 kilometer of length and around I think 3 meters to 4 meters of diameter. So the recent one that we have constructed is an Asian Development Bank project. The tunnel number 4, and it's just recently on 2021, it was during the onset of the COVID pandemic, we completed this project. And right now, Manila Water are now constructing the tunnel number 5. So it's now constructed parallel to the 4 aqueducts, tunnels, I mean. And from the Bigte, so we call it Bigte Basin because this is the transition between the tunnels and the aqueducts. And right now we have 6 aqueducts. So that's 3.1 to 3.3 meter diameter. So the length of those aqueducts is around 15 kilometers. And the oldest one is aqueduct number 1, which was constructed in 1939, and aqueduct number 2 was constructed in 1940s, 48 or 46. So what we are planning right now is to decommission those aqueduct because it's already old and dilapidated, and we loaned the project to the Asian Development Bank. Actually, I'm the project manager of this project, so that's around 3.6 billion pesos of of project that belong to a Asian Development Bank. And the contractor is a Chinese contractor, and the consultant is a Korean company. So this aqueduct, the aqueduct number 7, will replace the aqueducts 1 and 2. So that's the plan of MWSS. So we are targeting to complete the project on next year, contractually October 2024. So hopefully we can complete it on time. And from the outlet of the aqueduct, so we have this portal. We call it Novaliches portal. This portal distribute the water coming from Ipo Dam to the 2 concessionaires, Manila and Manila Water. So 60% of water goes to Manila, and 40% goes to Manila Water. So what else? So for the Laguna Lake, so we have 3 plants right now. 2 from Putatan, 300 MLD, and Cardona, which is 100 MLD. And as I mentioned a while ago, so we have plans to construct another plants in East Bay, this one. And for the Poblacion, that's around 150 million liters per day. And of course, for the Tayabasan Dam, so this is a project of the Wawa JBCO, which is 80 million liters per day, which is the phase 1 of the new Wawa bulk water project. And I just would like to share to you this quote from, actually I get it from the report from the National Water Resources Commission. This is 1976 report. So the Philippines is one of the countries blessed with abundance of natural resources, but it tends to be available in the wrong place, the wrong time, in the wrong quality. Because as you can see, sorry for the data, this is the historical record of the Angat Dam. No? Actually, right now, the elevation of Angat Dam is 209 already, 0.5. So based from the projection, we are projecting to have the Angat Dam to at around 210 to 212 for this year. So that since we're experiencing right now El Nino, right? And El Nino, the effect of El Nino based from our task force meeting, the PAGASA said that the effect of El Nino will be experienced by us until second quarter next year. So we need to prepare for that. That we are conserving the water right now at Angat Dam. So as you can see, based from the codes that I mentioned a while ago, when we need the water, that's the time that the precipitation, the rain is not flowing in the watershed. So during the summer, we have a lot of problems on the water supply. So that's why we're now implementing the water security projects that where I will be presenting for the next slides. So in the effect of impact of the increase and decrease of the rainfall volume. So this is the 2015 El Nino, wherein we experienced drought in our watershed. This is the actual picture of the Angat Dam. And during the onset of the rain, so this is the problem that we are experiencing. So this was the Typhoon Ulysses that we have experienced in 2020. This is the first time that we experienced this kind of turbidity, around 6,000 NTU of water. So as you can see, the water's really turbid, brownish. And then you can see there's a lot of trees in logs, debris in the watershed that causing clogging at the intakes. And if you remember the 2019 water shortage situation, this is what happened. So where the dam, the Lamesa Dam was drying, Angat Dam was drying, and also we're experiencing a lot of algal blooming or eutrophication in the Laguna Lake. That's why the effect, there's a lot of customers are lining up at the street to get the water. So aside from that, we have these challenges in implementation of the water sources here in Metro Manila, especially for the one of the main issues that we are experiencing is the permitting works. Most of our projects we're constructing it in a watershed area, and some of those areas are located in an ancestral domain. Here in the Philippines, we have this IPRA law, or the Indigenous People Rights Act, wherein if the park is located in an ancestral domain, you need to get a certificate of precondition from the IPs. So we need to conduct the free, prior, and informed consent process to get this certification from the IPs. Actually, for your information, for the Kaliwa Dam, we get this permit from the IPs, I think around 7 years. So that's very long journey of getting this permit. And just to share to you, we will be paying around 160 million pesos for the disturbance fee of the IP. So that's a one-time payment for the IP. So actually, it will be paid by Manila din Manila Water, and it will be passed on to the customers. And aside from that, there is an annual payment of, I think, around 46 million pesos. So that's a lot of money to invest in implementation of the water sources project here in the Philippines. And aside from that, there's a lot of security concerns also, since it's in the middle of the mountains. There's a lot of rebel groups in the mountains, and we're also dealing with that. In Kaliwa Dam, there's some instances that the equipment of our contractors, they burn it. So that's why we're deploying militaries, PNPs in these areas just to complete the project. And of course, pandemic situation. So that's some of the issues. So what the government is doing with this kind of challenges. So we're lucky to have the government that are supportive on the implementation of the previous administration's project. So you have this Build program of then Duterte, and now the Build Better More program of the current administration. So we have these infrastructure flagship projects, 194 projects as listed in NEDA in March 2023, and 44 of those 194 are water resources. And the contribution of MWSS for this Build Better More program of Marcos administration is the 3 projects. Actually, originally this is 4 projects. Actually, the IFP project is originally this is around 75 projects, but it's already expanded to 194. So the 3 projects of MWSS, this one. So we have the Angat Water Transmission Project, which is the Bigtin Nubaliches Aqueduct number 7. And the second one is the Wawa Bulk Water Project. So, Melvin. And the New Centennial Water Source Kaliwa Dam Project. So the Kaliwa Dam Project, this is a 600 million liters per day of, actually this is a phase 1 project of the whole Kaliwa Dam system. The second, the Kanan Dam naman. No? So from Kaliwa to Kanan. So for the benefits of those are not Tagalog speaking here, Kaliwa is left and Kanan is right. So because we have these 2 rivers, the name of these rivers is Kaliwa and Kanan. So the Kanan Dam project is around 3,000 million liters per day. So that's very huge project, and we're now working with the private-public partnership PPP Center on the submission of this project. This is an unsolicited proposal from a private company. So hopefully we can get the approval from the NEDA next year. And it's the water security pillars of MWSS. You know? And these pillars was created when our administrator, Leonor Cleopas, entered and as an administrator. So we have projects like re-engineering of raw water sources. So as I mentioned a while ago, we have these tunnels, aqueducts, and we are repairing the existing facilities. And part of it is the repair of the losses because these structures are really old now, and we need to repair those stems. So for the existing transmission line right now, I think the losses based from our water balance around 200 million liters per day. So that's a lot. That's the one plant already in Potatan. And for the short to medium term water sources, is with the help of our concessionaires, Manila and Manila Water. Since constructing new water sources is very hard, as I mentioned a while ago, we're getting permits 7 years, and the construction is 5 years. So we need to implement these short to medium term water sources, and these are the projects that the concessionaires that are doing right now. And for the long term water sources, because we have the 90% dependency on Dangat Dam, so we want to lessen these dependencies on Dangat Dam. That's why, as I mentioned a while ago, Angat Dam is around 4,000 million liters per day, and Kanan Dam is 3,000 million liters per day. So we wanted to lessen those dependencies on this dam. And for the last slide, so I just wanted to show you the roadmap of MWSS that we want to implement until 2050. So that's the plan of MWSS. And this supply and demand graph that we have created is to bridge the gap on the demand, because the demand that we have established is we have already incorporated the existing demand of the concession, the customers, the effect of the pandemic, and also the economic development. So this water supply project will bridge the gap between the demand. So thank you. That's all.
Once again, a warm applause to Mr. Patrick Dizon. Thank you for sharing insightful information that the government is doing to ensure water security in our country. And Arup is very proud also that some of those projects we were involved, especially on the Wawa project. Now, introducing our next speaker. Our third speaker today is our lead for the water business for the Australasia region. He has been helping clients envision the future, develop strategies, and make complex decisions for sustainable outcomes. With over 30 years of experience in the water industry, which includes engineering, construction, project management, he leads with care and courage, prioritizing team well-being over project performance and professional growth. He works collaboratively with stakeholders to ensure successful outcomes of the project. Nonetheless, let's have a warm welcome to Mr. Wayne Middleton.
Thank you. I'm going to assume you can hear me okay? Don't need to go closer. I've been at Arup just over 1 year. So I thought what I might do tonight is not focus on my 1 year with Arup, but actually focus on the 7 or 8 years that I did before joining Arup, which was for SEQ Water. So SEQ Water is the bulk water provider in a small section of Queensland. I come from Brisbane. But Brisbane is a capital city in Australia, in Queensland. We have nearly 3 million people, 5 million if you include the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast. So 5 million people, but it is the most north, so it sits close to the Tropic of Capricorn. And what we now know is that Brisbane, of all the capital cities in Australia, is the most prone to climate change. My role for the last 7 years was to do the water security program. So some of the pictures, interestingly, that I'm going to show will be different, but you can see that they look a little bit different, but also the same from the conversation that we've just had about meeting supply-demand curves and what it looks like when dams dry. And that became my obsession or my passion was, how do we now plan water supplies into the future in such deep uncertainty? Whether that's decarbonisation, whether that's increasing the biodiversity in our catchments, whether that's flooding, whether that's drought, or whether that's actually the fact that our customers are actually demanding more of us as water utilities in terms of our role that we play in amenity and providing better livable cities. And I could stop on this slide. For me, it really came down to, as a planner, what is acceptable? What is acceptable when you have no water left in dams? What is the acceptable minimum level of water that our residents or our customers would expect? What is acceptable in terms of the amount of money people will pay for water? What is acceptable for people, for animals that don't have a say in the provision of water, in how much water they need to sustain themselves? What is acceptable for industries, for commercial customers? What is acceptable for people who aren't represented in the debate about water security? And I came to know these two issues, reliability or resilience, and I've called them the misunderstood twins. When we talk about water security in Australia, we talk about reliability. It's just the average demand over the long term. So how much water can we take out of our system sustainably over the long term? We don't talk about the resilience of the system. We don't talk about what happens when we get system shocks, when we get peak demands, when we get floods. We really just talk about how much water can we take out of the system over the long term. And we start to talk about options that feel like new supplies, managing demand, or operating differently. When you start to think about resilience, and that what climate change is bringing, climate change risks are about some of the short-term shocks on the system. You start to talk about different supply options, not just relying on dams. Redundancy, how much do you have to build in case you have failure? And managing assets more carefully. This is what Queensland looked like when I returned from the UK to the Queensland. This is our biggest dam, Wivenhoe Dam. Supplies about 70% of all the water for southeast Queensland. And over 7 years, it nearly emptied. First time that had ever been seen in southeast Queensland, a drought of that impact. During that period of time, we managed the demand, we halved people's demand, but we also built a desalination plant, and we also built a purified recycled water scheme. And it was during that the actual planning around how you actually prepare and a community for drought that I became involved in SEQ Water. We come back to acceptability. We tool those levels of service. So what is the current frequency and extent of water restrictions, and is that acceptable? I guess the important thing to note there is that the demand lines go up. So we saw before in the presentation before increasing demand lines, and we all know that the demand on our system is going to increase. But you can see on both of these graphs now, lines that are starting to drop off. They start to decline. That's what the supply or reliable supply of our systems is doing all across the world. When we apply new climate projections, higher temperatures, higher evaporation, longer droughts, you see that the performance of the system declines. And it means that our dams are becoming more unreliable. You could draw pictures like this in every capital city, every place. And so what does that actually mean? It means that reducing demand becomes so much more economically viable. Every drop saved really does make a difference for the environment, for bills, for costs, for drought, for reliability, for resilience. And this is our drought response plan. So we have a drought response plan. It relies on us using desalination, and it relies on us using a recycled water scheme. So it actually becomes very, very expensive to run the water supply system when the drought progresses. But resilience is what's really changed our thinking. Resilience is these short-term shocks. What happens when you have failure of your key treatment plants? What happens when you start getting more flooding or more intense rainfall and the turbidity of the river system starts to decline? You get brown rivers. What happens after 4 days of really hot weather and everybody has showers, filling up pools, trying to keep the garden green? We don't have enough production at that point to actually meet that demand. What happens when we get network failures, storm surges, sea level rising, salinity in our water supplies? What happens when we get cyber attacks or criminal attacks? What happens when we can't get access to certain key issues because of damage, whether that's bushfire, whether that's flooding? And what happens when we start to get flooding or bushfire or pandemics and can't get chemicals or supplies to our treatment facilities? This is what's really changed our thinking in terms of new water supplies, not drought. We know we need to build new supplies for drought, but how much do we need to build for these system shocks as a result of adapting to climate? This is the Brisbane River that flows into Brisbane, an agricultural area. This is what happens to our river. It just turns brown. That's the river. That's the inlet pump station to the largest water treatment plant in southeast Queensland. That was out for 4 days and the city nearly ran out of water. In Sydney, this is Warragamba. Warragamba Dam comes down through here into the Prospect treatment plant. Again, 70% of Sydney's water supply. Because of how turbid and dirty that river gets in flood events, they're now investing hundreds and hundreds of $1 million in putting additional treatment capacity in front of the treatment plant to make sure that they can continue to operate that plant. So just for shocks, just another $250 million to protect Sydney's water supply on the occasion when the turbidity in the river gets too high. This best practice adaptive planning is actually where I think that as water utilities we need to explore. What are some of the likely options that we can protect against change? We don't know what the actual demand is going to be for water because we don't know what the energy sector is going to do or demand for water. We don't know what new technologies are going to come to reduce our residential demand. We don't know what the Olympics in Brisbane might look like in 10 years' time. We're past now. We're not in the luxury of planning 20 years ago when we just used to draw straight demand lines. It's uncertain. And so are the options that are open to us. At the moment, we can't do recycled water, but in 5 years' time, we can. So how do we need to protect? What conversations do we have to have with our policy makers and our community to make sure that maybe one day we can use recycled water? Like the great conversations that you've had here and starting to use recycled water. For me, there's so much that we can do upstream in catchments. It's very, very hard to justify the price in our current economic frameworks. Regulators want fixed outcomes, definable costs. But really, we have shown around the world now that investing in remediating and investing in catchments or upstream river systems has so much benefit downstream. And we're starting to see tools now and new economic assessment frameworks and business case frameworks that recognise the ability and the advantage of actually investing in catchments rather than grey infrastructure, rather than big tunnels, big pipes, big desal plants. And this is just one near me where I live. So this is a small river system. In that in the flood that we had earlier in the year, this whole thing was washed away, all washed away. But it has created a protected open space. The water did get away. It wasn't damaged and washed away. It did serve its purpose. It hasn't been built out. It's not going to be urbanised. It has increased the biodiversity of the area. And it's our natural capital, and it's in our park in Brisbane. And I think projects like this are testament to what water companies can do when they talk to local communities and local customers to actually co-develop and co-design solutions where they live. Thank you for having me. I hope that was useful.
Thank you very much, Wayne, for imparting us the importance of project planning, water planning as a whole. All right. Our final speaker for today is one of the RF's director. With over 30 years of experience, he had managed complex projects across various infrastructure sectors, including large-scale MTR and other Hong Kong government projects. He handled ADB infrastructure projects and other smaller, local, private, and regional scale projects. He has led teams in civil engineering, tunneling, cavern engineering, engineering geology, hydrology, GIS, economics, and environmental engineering, and geotechnical work in various East Asia locations. He has developed tunneling and engineering geology teams in Hong Kong and providing guidance and support to the team. He is currently president of Tunneling Society of the Philippines. May we call on none other than Mark Wallace.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm here to sort of fill in the sort of how to get water from A to B. So it's the unsung hero of. Is that better? Oh yes, okay. So yeah, so I'm here to sort of go through the sort of support systems that you give to the water supply network. So it's about how tunnels can interact and sort of support the robust water systems that we have, and what the earlier speakers have been talking about. So just to sort of run through some of those sort of techniques that we would normally employ when we're actually looking at tunnels. So obviously we're looking at how we connect our dams, our reservoirs to our water treatment works and our sewage treatment works. So TBM tunnels, mechanized tunneling is the common sort of norm these days in terms of how we do it. So we have different types of TBMs that are used to do pipes and tunnel sort of conveyance systems. And obviously for us, it's the important aspect is how much space you have, how much sort of ground conditions, and the selection of those things is very important when we're thinking about how we actually do different types of tunnels. Mine tunnels is the other type. So this is one where we're actually excavating in the ground. We can use drill and blast methods, mechanical excavation, such as road headers and so on. Again, this is another method that's used frequently when we're actually looking at how to create tunnels and connect things through the underground. Caverns, this is something that is actually a trend in the world, where people are looking how to create spaces to put in things like sewage treatment works. So quite commonly these days, people are seeing sewage treatment works as NIMBY facilities. So it's something which is certainly in Hong Kong and other Scandinavian countries, transferring these type of facilities, because actually they have a blighting effect on nearby communities, and putting them underground into caverns or covered sort of type of facilities is certainly what is the trend globally. So tunnel portals, obviously you need to get in the ground, you need to be able to create either going into the hillside or creating shafts, and that's important when you're doing connections and you're actually having to connect into the existing water supplies or existing sewage and other networks. And then really the sort of most important one for sort of urban areas is looking at micro tunnels. So there's a wealth of different techniques: pipe jacking, horizontal directional drilling, and the technology in this area is improving quite significantly, and it's becoming more reliable in terms of settlement control, actually in terms of providing a more robust and better solution for installing pipes in dense urban areas. So I'd like now to give you some examples of some of the water tunnels that we've been doing in Arup. So this is one we've just completed recently. This is the NBAQ4 tunnel for Manila Water. And about 2 or 3 months ago, we did a 1,000 MLD test. So this tunnel is now operating successfully, and we're very proud to have been part of that journey with Manila Water. And this one has actually had quite a significant, history in terms of using this tight radius TBMs, because obviously you need the horizontal alignment to be able to navigate the corners and try to stay within the domain of the government areas, or try not to impose yourself upon different types of right-of-way issues. So this was quite unique. This TBM had an 80-meter radius, and we went within 2 meters of MRT7 piles for the railway line. So quite a challenge, but this is successfully operating now, and is now taking the intake level to a low level within La Mesa to aid water security for the Balara water treatment works. So this is another one in Hong Kong. So this was actually, I think you probably saw in the news, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Hong Kong had a 1 in 400 or almost 1 in 500 year storm. And all of the sort of rain that dumped on the territory had lots of severe flooding. And actually, within 2 days, or within 1 to 2 days, the city got back to normal. And it's because of systems like this that were installed a few years ago that actually they've been able to recover so quickly. And this is a flood prevention scheme. Waterloo Road did actually flood, but obviously the tunnel's designed for 1 in 100 year return period, not 1 in 500. So actually, it did actually perform quite well considering. So this is another scheme in Hong Kong that was focused at the sewage treatment. So this was to collect the sewage from different primary screening stations. So to convey the water to the central Stonecutters Island sewage treatment works. And it was basically to improve the water quality in Hong Kong. And ARB were involved in various aspects of this for contractors, looking at this deep tunnel system, looking at the deep shafts that were used to convey the runoff and the sewage that was usually being dumped into the harbour. So at the Stonecutters treatment facility, we were involved in doing some pipe jacks and some local shafts to have as an outfall, and also for new pumping stations. So another one that Hong Kong have done is a flood prevention drainage tunnels. So I was involved in the Hong Kong West drainage tunnel, which is about 10 kilometers with 2 large TBMs that were picking up the land, so the runoff from the hillsides before it hit the urban areas. So the concept that Hong Kong had put together was to try to capture this, to try to alleviate flood prevention. So you can see the urban areas with all the reclamation, the water would basically be captured in this tunnel scheme before it actually went down there. And again, this performed very well in the last storm that they had. So one of the concepts that we put together, which actually saved quite a lot of time and money, was this TBM tunnel, and then concurrently drill and blast adits, and then a raise bore, which then formed the shaft. And some of these were up to 100 meters deep. And this saved a lot in terms of the mucking out and the construction of the shafts in very sort of tight areas in the middle of the urban area. So some of our experience we've applied in Wuhan. So it's a similar sort of deep tunnel sewage scheme that was put forward, and we did reviews on design of that, just to make sure that the hydraulics and and the schemes were going to be designed well and actually perform well. And then an interesting one that we did in Lake Mead, again, this is about climate change. This is about making the invert level lower for the takeoff for the Lake Mead, which is connected to the Hoover Dam, and how to sort of maintain water supply over the long term. So here we were looking at a new intake structure at a very low level, and it was about 185 meters below the top level of the lake. We had to do blasting, underwater blasting to take excavation, and everything was done underwater. So this was the intake structure constructed on the barge and then lowered down into the lake. And then the TBM came in, and there was a specially designed bell that would allow the TBM to enter the intake structure, so that they could then dewater that and then allow it to work inside the bell to make everything watertight and keep everything secure. So another one that I mentioned earlier about caverns. So this is one I worked on about 10 years ago, looking at how to transfer Shatton sewage treatment works, which is in a sort of prime real estate area, how you can move that into caverns so that you can improve and the sort of blighting effect, or remove the blighting effect from the existing communities around the surface sewage treatment works. And then you can also sell the land as well once you've relocated it. So in Guildford, Sewer UK, this is one we were working with contractors to actually put in slightly curved pipe jacks. So usually pipe jacks go from shaft to shaft, but we managed to convince the client that you can put in some curved sections so we can get some better efficiency and reduce the number of shafts that he needed, so saving money. And this one is, I put this in to highlight the sort of common problem you're getting in urban areas about how much congestion you have in the ground. And actually, as development continues, you find that you have to go deeper every time because of the existing congestion pushes you down to go to ever deeper depths. And this is one we're doing just now in Hong Kong, where we're doing an asset survey of about 200 kilometers of tunnels in Hong Kong, 144 portals and 35 shafts. So this is part of an ongoing inspection routine that we're doing to over about 3 years to check all of these previous tunnels and basically do assessments of what the condition is like. So we've set up a sort of routine and a procedure to collect the data, to be able to manage that data, classify it so that we can find the defects, so that we can actually come up with a plan on how to change those and repair them. So we applied digital solutions in doing that. So, obviously for water companies, asset management, and that type of thing is very important. So we've developed these sort of in-house schemes to try to manage this inspection process over the next couple of years. So that was all I was trying to sort of put to you, some of the examples from overseas, so that you can see what we've been doing and maybe some of the solutions that might be appropriate for Philippines. Thank you.
Again, a warm applause for all our speakers. Thank you for all those insightful information and empowering presentations. Now we're going to move on the Q&A sessions, and may I call again my partner, Ms. Donna, and all our guest speakers to be in the presentation area.
There's a free wine for every questions that you will be thrown to our speakers, okay? So best questions, more bottle of wine waiting for you. Okay, I think I'll start with the first question to Mr. Patrick Dizon. Okay, one of the projects that one of the problems that you've mentioned on the implementations of the project is time for the securing of the permits. So, what is the actions, I think, by the MWSS in handling this, especially in the LGU units?
What we're doing right now, especially for the LGUs, no, because we have this Metro Manila Council, no, we're presenting projects, no, that we're presenting the problems about securing the permit. Actually, there's a lot of stages on acquiring permit here in Metro Manila. We have homeowners, we have barangay, we have municipality, city permits. Then after that, we also get the traffic, MMDA. What else? DPWH. So there's a lot of permits that we need. Our contractors need to get. So what we're doing right now is to ask the council, the Metro Manila Council, to create an ordinance to provide us a permit while doing the process of acquiring. They let us construct, but since there's a lot of LGUs here in Metro Manila and municipalities, so sometimes, actually always, we get problem on implementation of these ordinances. So hopefully we can address that the soonest time, because we're having this the water resources management officers helping us right now to address those problems that we are experiencing.
Thank you for that, Sir Patrick. In the interest of time, we'll allow one question per speaker. So raise your hands if someone would like to ask some questions to our speakers.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, great presentations, everybody. Thank you very, very much for that. Very, very informative. I'm just wondering, there's assembled expertise here, and this is a country that has a massive need for this type of infrastructure. If there are any best practices that you might be able to help us and recommend for either contractors like ourselves, consultants, other consultants, clients, the industry in general, I'd really appreciate any insights you might be able to offer.
One thing I might suggest, which I touched on there, is the city water resilience approach supported and developed by ourselves, but with Rockefeller Foundation and Lloyds Foundation. World Bank provided independent assessment of it, and we worked with the Stockholm International Water Institute on water governance. What was great about that was not just that it was about looking at all the shocks and stresses that a city faces related to water, but it was looking at catchment scale. Because when we started the approach, we found out that many cities limited their thinking to the limit of their city boundary, and we thought that was a real shortcoming. So it's being adopted now, I think, as best practice, and is the engine behind a number of approaches: the Resilient Water Accelerator and the African Cities Water Adaptation Fund and Plan, both of which are aimed at scaling up to hundreds of cities rather than just doing individual cities. I think we need something like that so that we don't just knee-jerk to what the latest shock or stress is, and adopt a much more comprehensive resilience approach. Okay?
So, if I'm speaking about the underground, right, so maybe I'm biased a little way. I can see that some of the examples about how you manage the underground, there's lots of pipes, there's congestion, there's various things in the underground that is not properly planned. And I think that Manila in the Philippines is in its infancy in terms of trying to manage what is going underground. And I certainly would advocate that some of the examples from overseas of how to plan the underground better should be something that Manila, certainly Metro Manila, should try to do. Because you can see that the cost starts to increase when you have multiple layers of things, and then people have to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and then things become more problematic. So we should really try. That was one thing that I would, if I put my tunneling hat on, I would say that we should try to do that, because there's a whole range of people trying to get that space underground.
When I heard your question, I thought two things. One was actually what's happened here in Manila to get a purified recycled water scheme off the ground and commissioned is global best practice. And it hasn't happened in many places around the world. So hats off to that. The other thing I would say, and in Australia, we're moving away from piecemeal delivery of projects. So it used to be government did a business case, did a feasibility study, did a design, did a build, did an operate. I think now, with all of the new infrastructure that's going to be required around the world, it's collaboration and partnerships, really looking for best practice technology. And there are places around the world where that, in terms of membrane technology or underground technology, or with an engineering house and a contractor, and being able to actually come together for a range of projects, not just this. We've all sort of got used to just coming together, one project, come away, build. There's a need now for much more collaboration to ensure that, well, one, you're more competitive, but also much more effective and efficient in terms of delivering some of these projects. That's what I thought of when I heard your question.
Thanks for that, sir. Do we have any more questions that we're going to entertain?
Thanks for the presentations, Yang Villa from Asian Development Bank. What would be your key or main ask from financial institutions to steer us towards water security and resilience?
I'll sort of take the pressure off because we don't have a lot of ADB or World Bank sort of money in Australia. But what I would say from funding organisations, whether that's private money, public money, government money, is for there to be more openness and willingness to different sorts of solutions. Traditional concrete or grey infrastructure solutions are really bankable. You get a depreciation of the asset, you know how much it's going to cost, it's an outcome. What's not so certain are some of the green or nature-based solutions, and they're hard for funding organisations or banks or finances to actually invest in, because sometimes the outcome's unknown, sometimes the reliability and resilience of them is unknown, and actually pricing in biodiversity, natural capital, some of those advantages of schemes like that don't fit naturally into an investable prospectus for a project. That seems to be where we need to change the market, is to see the value of non-grey infrastructure solutions.
I think I'd be interested also in understanding the governance of the system, or clarifying the roles and responsibilities of the existing system before we commit to projects. And when we commit to solutions, think about outcome-based solutions rather than output-based projects. I think that's really important, that we start to tackle these challenges with a clear understanding of what we think the sort of outcome that we want. I think that would be a good start. When we involved the World Bank in reviewing what we were doing in terms of our governance mapping and modelling across the water cycle, and I think that's a real, it's not quick and easy, but it is a practical step that you can take that subsequently will help you in the way in which you can prioritise investment. So, good question there, thanks.
Hello. Yes. Good evening. I'm Jenner from EdCop. So just want to hear from you guys. Sir Patrick already presented that the Philippines is now transitioning from a water management office to a Department of Water. So I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on that? Are we moving in the right direction?
From the first State of the Nation address of the President Marcos, Department of Water is one of his main agenda. So actually, the agenda of the Marcos administration right now is water security. So for MWSS, we're supportive of that creation of the Department of Water because it will synergize all of the projects that we are implementing. Because right now, we're also having problem with the duplication of the projects that's being implemented by different agencies here, especially in water.
So much to talk about, but so little time. But I hope we found this session, especially the discussion, meaningful and empowering. So that wraps up our Q&A session. And finally, I would like to call our Managing Director of the Manila office, Sir Jason Simpson.
It's been a brilliant evening. Thank you everyone for coming. I'd like to thank Nico and Donna for handling things and looking after us all. Thank you very much. To esteemed guests, clients, partners, and also our colleagues, thank you very much for making the journey here tonight. And please stay if you can. We'll carry on for a little bit longer. For our guests, thank you, Wayne. I learned a little bit about nature-based and also how it really is a local issue, and you can see it in your backyard and you can see the benefits of it. On Mark, as usual, can never have enough tunnels. So thank you for that. And we'll expect you at the next one, regardless of the subject, to have a tunnel talk again. And my view of pizzas has changed, of course. And I'm sure you've had that comment before, but I think it's a really good way of thinking about things. Patrick, most of all, thanks to you. Much appreciated. My big takeaway from that was the slide you had when you showed the scaling up and the difference you made when public and private got together and how that really accelerated things. And I think it goes back to the theme and some of the answers which were given. It's partnership and collaboration and sharing advice and sharing experiences. And I think that's what we hope we can do here with people in this room in the Philippines. And also, we can also learn from the people in this room for the solutions we're trying to do both here and also elsewhere. So thank you very much, everyone. And I would just like to present a certificate to Patrick to say thank you. So Adrian, I'd like you to come up as well, please. Thank you very much. Thank you for this evening. Thank you.